everyone for being here today. I've got Lisa Gometz here from Save the Songbirds, and it's really exciting to have you here today. Her title is Save Our Songbirds, 3 Ways You Can Help at Home. Thank you, Lisa, for being here and sharing this very important message and little things we can do to help.
Susan, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your busy day to talk a little bit about birds. Birds are amazing. Let's take just a minute here and watch a little bit of video that shows some of the amazing behaviors and colors and songs that songbirds bring to us. Some of our favorites here. Everybody's hungry. So birds are just a fascinating thing, just part of what gives us great pleasure in life. But the reason I'm here today is that our birds are also in trouble, and they're in trouble globally in North America and here in Wisconsin. There's been a kind of a drumbeat of studies over the last 10 years that have chronicled our birds declining. And one that really was kind of a wake-up call for people came out in 2019. And it was done by major bird groups like the National Audubon Society, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. And they concluded that nearly 30% of North America's birds, or nearly 3 billion birds, had vanished from North America since 1970. That number is a little bit hard to get your head around. So for those of you who feed birds, that's like 1 in 4 of the birds that were at your feeder in 1970 are no longer there. So really just starting to be something that we're noticing in our daily lives. And this study showed that not only was it birds that were rare or declining to begin with that had suffered some losses, but also common birds, birds like our favorite, the Baltimore Oriole. And this bird, in fact, has lost 40% of its population since 1970. A report came out 2 weeks ago and showed that since 2019, when that one study was done, birds have continued to go down. More than a third of our species in the United States are of high or moderate conservation concern, and more than 100 species have lost half of their populations in the last 50 years. So you can see here, particularly eastern forest birds and grassland birds in Wisconsin are among those that have declined quite a bit. Why should we care? Well, as we talked about a little bit earlier and saw in the video, birds are just a joy to be around. They bring us great joy and pleasure. And now science is starting to document that. A study from the United Kingdom from 2022 looked at people who either heard birdsong or saw birds, and they reported a 53% boost in mental well-being. And that boost lasted for up to 8 hours. So that's just incredible free medicine, something that we can enjoy every day. Birds are also important as dispersers of seeds, keeping our native ecosystems healthy. And in fact, the blue jay, scientists believe, was responsible for helping bring oaks back to the Midwest after the last glacier retreated about 12,000 years ago. So a bluebird can carry up to 5 acorns, and they can go up to about 2 miles, whereas squirrels, which we think about being kind of acorn carriers, they will stay right around the general area where the tree was that they got the acorn from. And lucky for us, blue jays' memory is not so good. They may hide up to 5,000 acorns, but they only remember about 1 in 4 of them. So they leave plenty of acorns to germinate. Birds are also important for controlling nuisance insects, and that's really important here in Wisconsin, where we've got agricultural and forestry industries that play such a big role in our state economy. Birds are also pollinators. The ruby-throated hummingbird is a pollinator of wildflowers, keeping our ecosystems healthy. And then birds also anchor our wildlife watching industry here in the state. Every year, Wisconsin generates $2.6 billion in wildlife watching for the wildlife watching economy, either people coming to our state to look at birds or people buying bird seed to feed birds or bird guides. So it's a big impact, and more people watch birds than hunt or fish, which are two popular activities in our state. And another good reason to care is that we want to leave our legacy to our children and our grandchildren. This little bird is called the golden-winged warbler, and Wisconsin has 20% of the world's remaining population of this little bird. And so what we do here in Wisconsin is going to be very important to whether our children and grandchildren get to see this and hear this bird. And then finally, we're also play an important role in nesting species such as the rose-breasted grosbeak, which is a favorite bird for many in the spring. Not only does this bird have badger colors, but it also is one of the birds that Wisconsin reports have more citizens who report to eBird have reported nesting rose-breasted grosbeak than any other state in the nation. So on that basis, who's willing to go in with me and try to petition for this to be our state bird instead of the American robin? So the scientists that concluded that about 30% of our bird population had vanished didn't look specifically at why that had occurred, but generally scientists have concluded that habitat loss is the biggest threat to our birds. Douglas Ptolemy, who's a well-known entomologist, talks about how we've modified our land quite a bit, and it's no longer supporting birds in the way that we need it to. So, for example, more than 50% of our land is modified for our cities, our suburbs, our infrastructure like pipelines and transmission lines and mines. Another 41% is involved in some kind of agriculture. And then the remaining wildlands are often impacted by invasive species such as buckthorn or honeysuckle. So not a lot of land left in its original state here in the United States. And it's also a concern what's going on our birds' wintering grounds. Many of our songbirds in particular will fly down to Central and South America for winter and actually spend more time there than they do here in Wisconsin. So this photo with the sun coming through is from the Gran Chaco, which is South America's largest forest after the Amazon. And every month, an area the size of 133 square miles is cut down. That's kind of a hard figure to get your head around, but for those of you who live in the Stevens Point area, Lake DeBay is about 10 square miles. So the loss to harvest is an area that's 13 times that size. So that's a big concern for our birds. Other top threats that are linked to humans are outside cats. Studies have shown that they can kill up to 4 billion 4 billion birds a year. And in fact, a worldwide study in 2023 looked at all the literature and found that there were more than 2,000 different kinds of species, wildlife species that cats preyed on, and 47% of them were birds. And unfortunately, it was not only very common species, sparrows, but it was also rare and declining species. Window collisions are another big problem for birds. And a study that came out in 2024 put the estimate at 3.5 billion birds killed every year in the United States by flying into windows. And about half of those are at our homes. So that's something that we as homeowners can pay attention to and make a difference for birds by taking a few simple fixes. So the scientists who uh, produced the 2019 study said that it's urgent. We need to urgently address the continued threats so that we do not lose our bird life. So that's kind of our charge and why we're here today. So out of all that seemingly bad news was born the SOS Save Our Songbirds campaign. We're an initiative of the Wisconsin Bird Conservation Partnership, which is a larger coalition, loose collaboration of 180 groups that are committed to sustaining native birds. And we wanted to just focus in on a couple of key steps that people could do. So we have some simple messages and also provide supplies to jumpstart steps at home. So we also wanted to make sure that our materials were bright and engaging. So we focus on 3 actions at home: planting native plants that are good for birds, protecting birds from window collisions, and purchasing coffee that protects our birds' winter habitats. So we're going to go through each of these steps one by one. The first and the most important, I think, because habitat loss is such a critical problem, is to add some native plants to your yard or even to your balcony, because native plants provide far more food for birds than non-native ornamental plants common in our yards. And for birds, it's particularly important because 96% of birds need to feed their babies insects, mostly caterpillars. So here's this little guy right here, weighs about half an ounce, about as much as 2/4. And when he's got a nest and has to feed he and she have to feed their young, they have to come up with 350 to 570 caterpillars a day for more than 2 weeks. So just a tremendous number of caterpillars. And if they can get those caterpillars from right around their home, that saves them a lot of energy and increases their ability to deliver the food that their babies need. So Mariette Nowak is a Wisconsin plant expert and native plant expert and a bird expert. And so she's written a lot about the ancient collaborations between native plants and native insects and how important that is, particularly to our birds. So native plants and native insects evolved together over millions of years, and insects developed enzymes so that they're able to safely digest the chemicals in certain specific plant families. And so it's a very tight mix. They can't just go eat any plant that they find. It's usually a family of plants or very small number. And so these ancient collaborations are what we need to foster on our landscape if we're going to feed our birds. So many of the ornamental plants that have been introduced, even though many of them have been here in the United States for a long time, still do not provide the same kind of food for our birds and other wildlife because the insects cannot safely eat their leaves. The Norway maple is an example of this. While it's been here for more than 200 years, it supports very few caterpillars. In contrast, the sugar maple that's native to Wisconsin supports hundreds of caterpillar species. So the sugar maple's a better choice for our yards. The good news is that our yards can help. So even if we've got a small yard or a patio, or a balcony even, we can still help provide some habitat for birds. Doug Ptolemy did a study in 2009 that compared suburban lawns, half of them that had non-native ornamentals and half of them that were dominated by native plants, and concluded that the yards that had more native plants supported significantly more birds and diverse birds than the yards that were dominated by non-native ornamentals. And furthermore, those yards that were dominated by native plants also supported birds, 8 times as many birds that were of conservation concern. So more rare birds and birds that are declining. So those yards were providing important habitat for those birds. And there's our yards, again, no matter their size, can play a role. And for migrating birds in particular, scientists talk about a fire escape, a convenience store, or a full service hotel. And our yards can play different roles. Here's an example of what I think is probably a full service hotel. It's actually the yard of Ryan Brady, who's a DNR bird expert. And he's been meticulously adding native plants to his yard, and actually reported that at the end of 2024, Ryan's bad year is a pretty good year for any of us. He managed only 152 species last year, which was his lowest total of the past 5 years. But you can see that Ryan's yard, this is an example of somebody that's providing a full service hotel for birds. But even balconies can help. And the gentleman who is the conservation director at the Chicago Botanic Garden has done 15 years of experiments of container gardening on his balcony in Chicago. And he's been very successful, and he has shared with us what are some of the plants that are really work well for people who are doing this for the first time. So I encourage you to try some of those if you've got a balcony or another tight space where you want to transform it so it helps birds. Well, moving on to what to plant, there's a lot of great resources online. Beyond the Bird Feeder is a publication that Mariette Nowak developed originally for the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. We have a copy on our website. It's a great little 16-page booklet with all kinds of lists of native plants, shrubs, and wildflowers that are good for birds. And then the National Audubon Society has a great interactive tool where you can put in your email and your zip code, and it will produce lists of plants that are good for your area. It will also, you could set a filter so you can select what kind of plants what kind of birds you want to attract to your yard, and then it will pull up lists of plants. Garden for Wildlife by the National Wildlife Federation has also a similar tool that allows you to look up lists of plants by your geographic area. So I encourage you to take a look. We've got those all linked to from our website up there. And here's just a couple of suggestions of plants that you might want to add or consider adding. These all work in a variety of different settings. Pussy willows supply a lot of insects, particularly the catkins come out, the little furry catkins come out early, and so they attract small insects and help provide a very valuable food source early in the year. Serviceberry also attracts insects early on, and then produces midsummer fruit that are very valuable. The fruit is high in sugar content, and so it helps fuel birds while they're busy carrying food back and forth to their young. Wild columbine is another good choice. Supports hummingbee birds and bees, and rabbit resistance and drought tolerant are 2 key selling points here in Wisconsin. Also, New England aster, another one that packs a punch in terms of providing caterpillars, and then also provides seeds for birds in the fall. So here's a listing of where to buy native plants. And Wisconsin's fortunate, we have a fair number of native plant nurseries, and we keep on adding to that number every year. DNR maintains a list of Wisconsin native plant nurseries on their website. We also link to it on our website. And I just pulled out, this is a list of the native plant nurseries from the Central Wisconsin listing in that DNR publication. and just a listing of some of the native plant sale fundraisers I found on the web in your area. So those are all good options for purchasing native plants. And with that, we'll move on to the second step that we encourage people to take is to protect birds from windows, flying into windows, particularly now that migration is really ramping up. There's going to be a lot of birds in the air, but glass is invisible to birds. And in fact, what's the problem is that reflected birds see habitat like trees reflected in glass, and they think they can fly to that habitat and instead run into that hard surface. And in other cases, there's a growing number of glass railings or glass walkways, and that's what they call kind of a fly-through problem. So birds, again, still see habitat on the other side of the window and think they can fly to it and instead hit the glass. The good news is there are many different solutions, and it's important to find one that works for you. So effective ones are if you've got an old house with double hung windows and insect screens that go on the outside, that can be a very good solution. And in fact, testing by the American Bird Conservancy has found that to be one of the top ones. So if you've got old screens that can go on the outside, put them up. Maybe if you're having your windows replaced, ask the window company, if they can provide some outside screens. Or there's also a number of products where you can put up little screens using suction cups to help birds. So again, insect screens. And then other solutions, there's a lot of different products that help you put lines, patterns, or decals on the outside of your window. And one that's very popular, becoming more popular, is kind of a grid of dots. There's a company that we often recommend, which is called Feather Friendly, that has a product that goes on like a piece of tape. You push it against the outside of your window, it has dots on the tape, and then they give you a tool that you really use to press the tape into the window, and then you pull the adhesive backing off and it leaves behind this grid of dots, which is relatively unobtrusive to the people that are inside the house, but it can be seen by birds, and it's been tested by the American Bird Conservancy and found to be very effective. So that's a popular solution. Another one that has gained popularity is called the Copian Bird Savers, also known as a Zen wind curtain. It's essentially a curtain made out of parachute cord that goes on the outside of the window. It has a horizontal piece and then vertical lengths that hang down about every 4 inches apart. And the lengths of parachute cord kind of sway in the wind, so they do signal to birds that there's something there and not to fly through. So that's what this looks right here. So the research that American Bird Conservancy has done on all these different products is leading to a couple of rules to follow. First is to tackle your worst window first. And fortunately, most people know what that window is, and they may only have one window or maybe a couple of windows that's a problem for birds. To ideally put your fix on the outside of the window so that birds can see it. And an important rule that American Bird Conservancy is settling on is to space your lines, decals, your dots about 2 inches apart. And that way, really small birds like a hummingbird or some wrens are not going to be able to think that they can maneuver through those spaces. So another thing that you can do is if you feed birds, put your feeders within 3 feet of the window or 35 feet or more away from the window. That will also help reduce bird window collisions. So other things to keep in mind, if you are having trouble, you've got a window that's very high, or for whatever reason, it's going to be difficult to get something done on the outside, try your solution on the inside of the window. And if you can, and then go outside, and if you can see that solution from the outside, chances are the birds will too, and that will help out. So doing something is better than nothing. And we appreciate anything you can do because you will make an immediate impact for birds. So our third step is to purchase bird-friendly coffee. And what does bird-friendly coffee mean? I'm often asked whether that means it's coffee that is good for birds to drink. And it has nothing to do with whether the birds can drink the coffee, but we're making sure that the places where coffee is grown, we're protecting bird habitat. So this map shows where the coffee is grown in the yellow, and then shows in the orange where bird life is particularly diverse. So these are hot spots, areas that really need protecting, and areas where birds, many of our favorites, spend their winter. So here we've got a Baltimore Oriole, a black and white warbler, scarlet tanager, an indigo bunting, and a yellow warbler. And these are all birds that we look forward to seeing every spring. And they're also birds that spend more of their year in Central and South America than they do in Wisconsin. So again, we've got to be concerned with what's happening while they're in Central and South America. One way we can do that is by buying bird-friendly coffee. So what's bird-friendly coffee? Well, it's coffee that's grown on farms that are certified by the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. These farms use 100% organic farming methods. They have to maintain at least 10 different native tree species, and those native trees are producing the insects that the birds need, as well as habitat where the birds can rest and forage. And the trees need to be mature, and a 40% shade cover means that if you're laying on your back and you look up, 40% of the sky above you is going to be covered with leaves. These farms also have to have no record of deforestation for at least 10 years. So the bottom photo here is what 75% of farms look like. They have cut down trees to be able to grow the coffee faster in the sun. And then the farms that receive the certification from the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center look like the top. They are growing their coffee underneath a canopy of native trees. And the Smithsonian does a lot of, not only are these farms inspected, I think it's every 3 years, but the Smithsonian does a lot of research on these farms just to make sure that these protections are doing their job. And the research has shown that bird-friendly coffee farms support 4 times as many bird species as a sun-grown coffee plantations. So bird-friendly coffee is one way, if you're a coffee drinker, that you can help out. I'm a coffee drinker, and about 66% of us are. So it is something where we can make a difference for birds. So the top shows the bird-friendly logo for birds. There are about 100 roasters, coffee companies, retailers in North America that sell Smithsonian bird-friendly coffee. The website birdfriendly.si.edu contains links to all of those companies, and it's easiest to buy this coffee online. One of our favorites is Birds and Beans coffee. It's out of the East Coast. It's not only bird friendly certified, but it's fair trade certified. So farmers are getting a really good price on that. And it's good for people and good for birds. So you can buy online or get a subscription. Birdsandbeanscoffee.com is where you'll find that. And the great news is that we now have some local options that are bird friendly. Barnwood Coffee in Two Rivers. This is a photo of Amy Haben, who is the CEO and roaster there. And so she is now offering 2 different bird friendly roasts. And then Ace Coffee Company in Superior also offers bird friendly coffee. So I encourage you to try that. And if you're not really into buying online coffee, the Smithsonian says the second best option for birds is to look for organic coffee. And that is widely available in grocery stores and coffee shops. You can look for the word organic on the label or the USDA organic logo. And here I've got an example. One of my favorite coffees is Ruby Coffee. And fortunately, they've got a number of different organic roasts. So take a look at that. What I do is I have a subscription for Birds and Beans. I get 2 bags a month sent to me automatically. And then I buy a bag of coffee, organic coffee from my neighbor who owns a coffee shop. And then I kind of try to mix it up. So I look around for different Wisconsin um, roasters and then look for their organic brews. So the exciting thing for 2025 is that the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center is building out a cocoa certification program. So it's a sweet expansion, and they just certified the world's first bird-friendly cocoa farm. It's in the Dominican Republic and actually is part of a bird sanctuary. So over 70% of that farm will be designated as forever wild. There's 3 chocolatiers that are using cocoa from Zorzal Cocoa, and there's one in Brooklyn, New York, one in San Francisco, and one in Asheville, North Carolina. Again, just kind of the early stages of pilot program, but we look forward to that rolling out to more companies and being more widely available. But it does mean that you can eat chocolate, drink coffee, and save birds. So I encourage you to do that. And other ways that you can help are plant some native plants that are good for birds, fix your worst window that birds are colliding with, and share what you did, because the power of having a friend or a family member show what they did is really what's going to make a difference for birds. We also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. It's on the subscription form is on the bottom of our website, home webpage there. And then also volunteer for SOS. We try to do events around the state, and you can find on our website a way to contact us. Give us an email and let us know that you're interested, and we'll see if we can find an event. So with that, together we're saving songbirds, 1 yard, 1 window, and 1 cup of coffee at a time. Thank you so much for what you're doing for birds. Together, we're making a difference.
Ah, thank you so much, Lisa. This is awesome. And these are very simple and very doable tips that I think we all can do and use. And I love that this campaign's really breaking it down to things that really make a difference by doing simple steps. And I know a lot of people are excited with spring being here and all of us seeing the birds coming back. We're like giddy trying to get out and seeing those birds that are coming to visit us again. So this is such a timely topic, and I'm sure we'll get the message spread for even further for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's great to hear.